Good morning. How's everyone doing? Oh, that wasn't good. Good morning. How's everyone doing? I'm honored to be here and share the stage. Over the last several weeks, we've gotten to know each other really well, if we hadn't already. And I think it's going to be a really engaging, exciting conversation that we all get to be a part of. So thank you for being here bright and early. And I want to start with a quick question before anything. Can you raise your hand? I just want to, for myself, have a show of hands. Have you personally invested before as an angel investor? Can you put your hand up if you've done that? I love it. I love it. That means we have a lot of people with experience within this room, but also some people that are here to learn more. And before we dive into it and talk to these folks who are going to give us so much important information, maybe we can start with a quick round of intros to let everyone know who you are. Could you maybe start for us right here?
Hi, everyone. I'm Abhinaya Konduru. I'm a partner at M25. We're a Chicago-based venture capital fund investing in the Midwest specifically at pre-seed and seed stage. And we've invested close to 150 companies over the past 10 years and looking to invest more.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Erin Horn McKinney, a proud Minnesota native from North Minneapolis. I am the founder and CEO of HBCU National Innovation Consortium, also known as HBCU NICE, which is a brand new nonprofit focused on supporting HBCU entrepreneurial ecosystems. Just recently left Howard University running their National Innovation Center there, which was also a consortium across HBCU. So this is work I've been doing for a long time, and a proud angel investor through Pipeline Angels and a few other focused groups.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Conweiler. I'm the managing partner of Long Jump. We are a Chicago-based venture capital fund. We have 43 companies. I think we took over the title from M25 of the most active pre-seed in Illinois, meaning that we write the most checks every year. So we're working our way up to the 150. My background is that I was an operator, so came into the venture world by starting businesses, also an active angel investor through a couple of groups in Chicago and direct. So excited to be here because I really am passionate about getting more people into this world if they want to be.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Reed Robinson, and I wanted to just say congratulations on the promotion to partner, Abhinaya. So
Woo!
That's a new. I think when we invited you, that wasn't the case, but now look at you.
Maybe that invite got the promotion.
Yeah, maybe. I think we definitely had something to do with it.
Yeah, I love it.
And that's a lot of banter you're about to see between Jazz and me, and that's just kind of the way it goes. Founder and partner of Groove Capital, we find and elevate Minnesota's kind of next great business leaders through our venture fund and angel group. My partner, Michaela, the master of ceremonies, you all know her, and our incredible team. I'm super proud of this event, this community, the work that we're doing here, and honored to be a part of this conversation.
Awesome. A lesson I learned from someone sitting on this stage was investing is kind of like real estate. The size and the price of things is different based on geographically where you are. So not only from a different perspective of where you are coming from, but in your work day in, day out, what is the kind of size of the investment that you're typically doing? And how did you find that kind of landing point within your organization? Maybe Reed, if you can start.
Yeah, we intentionally designed Groove to be the first institutional investor in Minnesota-based companies. So in our first fund, that was a $100,000 check that we would use as the instrument to get involved in supporting local founders. Now in Fund 2, we've remained pre-seed focused, and these things mean different things to different people, but basically, after you've kind of worked for maybe 6 months to maybe a year on this, you've developed an MVP, you may have found your first customer or two, you don't necessarily have the kind of trend lines that are going to help you raise a few $1,000,000. We want to come in and help you accomplish that. And the way that we're doing that now is with the $250,000 check. After we invest, we then socialize that deal with our network to see if anybody wants to add more. So there's kind of this two-sided operational kind of plan that we have in place where the founder knows that, in going through the process with us, on the other side of that is going to be a check. And then the icing on the cake is if anybody wants to add more to it, they'll have the opportunity to kind of socialize the deal with a network of trusted investors.
We're very similar to Groove in that we're the first capital into companies most often. So for 75% of our portfolio, we're the very first money in, both institutional or otherwise. We're a $100,000 check, standard terms, so $100K on a $5 million cap. We're also on our second fund. And we similarly try to get other people around the table because we know $100,000 is not enough. So when we invest, on average, $685,000 comes in through partner organizations, angels, a lot of co-investors that are mostly Chicago-based because our first fund was 100% Chicago. So we're trying to get other co-investors with us. But similarly, it's idea stage to one customer, maybe.
I'm going to approach this a little bit differently just because HBCU NICE is still very new, so we haven't invested yet because we just started to launch this first quarter. However, in past investments, really the voice that I bring to a lot of the work and the perspective that I bring is focusing on women and minority founders who oftentimes don't have that friends and family around, right? So from different organizations that I've worked at, whether it's in the public sector, because I've worked in government and helped with those first grants to get those that idea stage going, or individuals who have had a really hard time breaking into the investment space. So oftentimes those check sizes have been around, anywhere from 25 to 100K. And oftentimes we also are trying not to take out equity, right, in those initial angel investments because we know how predatory sometimes those practices can be and really thoughtful around that. However, in Pipeline Angels and in other angel groups that I'm a part of personally and some professionally that I've led, we're talking about similarly anywhere from 25,000 up to about 250,000. So often I really focus on that very early stage pre-seed founder who has often been over-resourced as far as advisement, but has a really hard time just getting someone to see the value in them as the founder. As we know, historically, that in angel investing or just in venture capital in general, that people tend to invest in people that they believe in, right? And there's been a lot of pattern matching that happens with that. So a lot of times we're working with founders who have more than enough experience, have amazing backgrounds, but have not been in spaces and places where they have the social capital and to get introduced to potential investors. So that's usually the space that I work in and try to support founders.
I really appreciate that, especially as a minority founder myself. That first round of friends and family is so difficult when you don't even know sometimes what an accredited investor means. And so that process is really hard for a lot of communities to start. So it's just so valuable.
And let me just speak on the thank you for bringing that part up, because I think it's also about educating people about what being an accredited investor is, because for women and minorities oftentimes are not in places and spaces where they even know that they can be accredited investors, right? People feel like there's like some special like a designation,
Yep.
and not realizing that you can self-designate. And so there's a lot of education, which of course is why I really love Angel Fest and wanted to come and support it, because about just people understanding and helping to even educate those in their community and circles around the fact that you can be an angel investor. It's not, you don't have to invest $1 million to help someone out.
Yeah, I love that. And before you answer, my background is as a courtroom litigator for the first 8 years of my career. So I like to throw out extra questions to make it difficult, like judges used to do for me. So beyond how the stage that you invest in, can you also touch on the process for you all as well and how that aligns with your stage?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like how a startup company has to prove out their milestones as they continue to raise more and more funds, we as funds also have to do that. So when we first started out, we were trying to prove that we have access to the companies here in the Midwest. But now we're at a stage where we can prove out that we have access to the companies, we're able to become investors in them. Now we're trying to prove out that we can get enough ownership into the companies. Because think about the math behind the funds. Ultimately, ultimately it's the returns that matter. The LPs that are giving us money, we have a fiduciary duty of returning that capital. So we're at a stage where we're investing anywhere between $250K to $1 million in check size, in hopes that we not only get into great companies, not only have great access, but also have enough ownership as the companies continue to raise more money and us getting diluted. But when the company does exit, we have meaningful ownership into them so that we can return that capital. So that's another way to kind of think about the fund progression as well. And to kind of answer on the process of how we invest into the companies, it takes a while to find that right company, but all of that starts from sourcing, finding the amazing companies and making sure that it's a two-way street of communication between who we are as investors and who the founders are and what they're looking for. So a lot of our sourcing happens through co-investors, community champions, and angel investors who are recommending or who are sending us the deals. So once we kind of see the opportunity, the next step for us is to do like a 30-minute conversation to see if it's a good fit, but good fit for M25, because every fund has their own thesis. For us, it's investing and backing the next big unicorns out of the Midwest. And as a generalist fund, we are looking at a lot of different variety of companies as well. So once that's done, we take it to the team meeting and decide, hey, do we want to continue the conversation? So we do a senior team meeting, and then we do a scorecard internally to kind of make sure we're not missing out on any question, but also quantifying at the early stage, which is really hard to do. So we try to come up with a way to put some numbers behind the metrics or the key milestones that we care the most about and see how do they stack rank or how do they rank. And then we use that as a guidance in terms of what the next steps is going to look like, not like to invest or not, but more as a guidance. And then we do another meeting, and that's when we decide if we want to lead, co-invest, or if we want to move into formal due diligence. So that's the process when it comes to going from that sourcing, like someone sending us a deal or us finding that deal, to kind of getting to that due diligence stage.
I love that. And at the end there, you kind of touched on how the deals come in and how they're sourced. And maybe I can transition to that. When you're thinking about deals coming in and you're seeing so many, I can only imagine how many, what are some of those green flags, as the kids would say? What are some of the things that you're looking for that you think, wow, we really want to take them into our due diligence process? What are the early indicators that you're looking for within the work you're doing day in and day out?
I can take this one.
Yeah.
So we actually have an application process. One of the things that's important to us is investing in folks that might not be networked into the Chicagoland ecosystem yet. So you do not need a warm intro to Long Jump to be funded by us. And in fact, we fund a lot of people who we've never met before the application process. So that's one thing to note. And 90% of our portfolio is underrepresented founders. Wow. And we think that's is a result of our process. So our first pass is through the application, and the green flags on that are, one, is it a market that we think can be big enough? So can you build a business that realistically can have 10 million top line to 100 million top line if things go very, very well? So that's number one. Number two is, what makes this founder special? And like, can you jump off the page with that? Which is harder on a written application often than when you're meeting someone in person. And so the green flag is like, oh, I learned something when I'm reading this, either because they have a unique insight on the market or because there's something really unique about the founder where I'm like, oh, wow, they have grit, they have resilience. I want to talk to them. And that's actually like a pretty high bar. And in contrast to Abanaya's process, because they're writing bigger checks a little bit late, like nuanced, slightly later than us, we're so much more about the founder. So when we think about our scorecard, it's like, okay, what makes this person unique? Do they have a unique insight? Do they have the grit and resilience? So our scorecard is truly more about the team and like what makes the team special. And do we think if someone's going to build something in this market that it could be them? And then it's like the business secondarily, which I think is more similar to angel investing, actually. It's about the person.
We also have a written application, and for a lot of the same reasons that you just described. But the way that I think about it within our process is the written application is like, we want to see the way that you think, and the way that you can communicate through a specific medium is actually really helpful for us to understand. Are they good communicators? Because that means they might be good at raising other money, they might be good at selling. The way that they can project their vision using a limited amount of space is really important information for us.
Storytelling.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Their storytelling. That's exactly where it comes from. And then once you get to the pitch, okay, well now that's actually where we want to see your personalities come alive and how you interact with each other. We'll probably come back to that in another part of the conversation, but just real quickly on the sourcing piece, because we kind of jumped over the importance of sourcing. The reality is for us, the best deals that we're investing in now started in relationships for me almost 2 decades ago. Like these are like relationships and community building that takes a long time and intentionality to build trust. And then that trust leads from a founder to another founder to somebody that's running a program that then introduces you to somebody you never met before. And I really want to stress the importance of, we heard this yesterday in Darren's talk and reiterated through the significance of network building and the time to put in, but going to things and teaching and investing and giving is what eventually comes back to you in the form of these opportunities that we finally now get to look at and evaluate.
Maybe I'll give a different approach. It's much harder to get to a yes than no, so we try to get to a no as fast as we can. So at different checkpoints, we have different questions that we ask, like what gets us excited and what's not a good fit for us. So kind of at that first stage, we're looking for 3 things. Is this in Midwest? Is this a type of company that we would invest in? And is it at the valuation that we typically invest in? So if those 3 kind of pass, we get to that first stage of an intro call.
And I'll just add, because I think these points are very valid and important around the founder story and what they're doing. But like every investor, right, you're looking at the market opportunity first and foremost. But I think, really, is this a subject matter expert in this work? Or have they been able to build the right team to make this happen? And so, because if you can't even get a few people together to buy into this idea, to get it going, and if also, are you able to even start like kind of building advisors and are they even coachable? Like those are some of the main things that I know that I've looked at or help advise around and making sure that we're not having blind spots in our pipeline, especially when you think about the market opportunity, not so much from is this the largest market opportunity, but is there a market, especially when you're talking about, underrepresented or new majority founders, right? There are markets that have not even been opened up yet because people didn't see the value in them. One of the things that I didn't share just about my background, part of how I even got into this space, is being a serial tech entrepreneur myself, really starting in the early 2000s, and coming out, one of the first businesses that I started was around online dating and having a dating relationship management tool. Online dating was still pretty taboo at that time, so to speak. And of course, it's funny because, we were innovators, and so we were too ahead of our time. But one of the things that we found as founders talking to investors, which of course at that time were predominantly male, they would say, who needs this? Who's talking about dating this much? And I'm like, do you have any idea? But it was because they just didn't understand that market, right? And so I think that there's so many amazing, especially when you talk about cultural products or things that just because that's not a community that you're familiar with, but there's so much potential, which also means that you can be an innovator in a space. So I really think, building on all of these points, I'm also looking for an amazing innovator who's fearless and not scared to try something new and be the one to kind of break into a space.
I really appreciate what you said around that, and it connects to our founder experience. One of my co-founders I see in the audience today. When we started, we were, an app to connect drivers to an attorney in the wake of the tragedy of George Floyd. And the founders were a black man that was working in finance and accounting background, a black computer science major that then went to law school and was a lawyer, and then a black man that was in tech sales for his entire life. We were the founders with that experience in the right place to do it. And I feel like that helped in those early stages where people felt like we were credible in that space. And so that really speaks to me. And the other part that I am very interested in is, I remember when we started, we were all first-time founders. I didn't know what a cap table was, right? Is that right? I feel like I didn't know what a cap table was when we started our business. Now I look to what founders are thinking about when they're approaching these meetings. So if you'd be so kind to give us a little piece of your secret sauce, when you're in this due diligence process and you're having conversations with founders, what is the thing that you're typically asking, or what are you looking for in that process that maybe other investors aren't thinking of, or maybe founders aren't expecting to hear from you?
Well, I was just going to share quickly, for me, one of the very first things that I'm looking for is passion. Like, how passionate are you about this that you're willing to, because we know as entrepreneurs, this is not easy. Entrepreneurship isn't meant for everyone. And people think that they want to start on this journey, but it's like, do they really have what it takes to get all the way through the no's, right? Because we all know there's going to be a lot of no's before you get to a yes through this process, and not just through the investing process. It could be through the production or the, whatever pieces of business. And do you have what it takes? And I'll just share quickly, there was an entrepreneur that I met with recently. I was at Halcyon Incubator in Washington, D.C., because they have a new cohort. And there was a woman who came up to introduce herself to me, and she's the founder of Expert IEP. And she just last year, she didn't know that I knew who she was because I had been following her story. She just won Pharrell's Black Ambition Fund for $1 million, and but she had passion around this, and this is why I'd been following her, because she was had this lived experience, right, of trying to work on an IEP for her daughter and wishing that there was that resource there, and she put together the right team, and and even though she and I ended up going to dinner the next day, and she was just explaining her founder story, which was that people along her journey keep telling her, oh, you need a PhD in this before you can start this process. And the thing about it is you don't have to know everything as the founder. Can you build the team that helps you answer these questions? Or can you, again, build the advisory board that helps you do this? But again, if you have the passion and grit to problem solve through all of these things, that's what I want to know. I want to know, are you going to take this all the way through, and that this isn't, or are you going to use this learned experience to help evolve something else and solve a real problem in the world? And a real problem doesn't mean it can't be a superficial real problem. It just means that it is a real problem. And then, how many people, especially in this day and age, as parents or relatives, know somebody that has an IEP, right? And she was solving, again, she was being an innovator in a space that really was kind of a taboo space that people never wanted to talk about or share, and created this. And that passion was there and resonated, so that I believed in her, and I know that others would as well.
The backstory is huge. And like you said, it's because when shit hits the fan, are they going to push through the barrier that they're experiencing? So I love that passion. True competitive advantages, and that comes from the experience. But I'll comment just on my experience with Turn Signal. This is a fund one, complete transparency, fund one investment of Groove Capital, Jazz and his team. And why was that? For all the reasons described, as far as passion in spades, 100%. But here are some of the things that you don't really think about as a founder that we are paying attention to. And in many cases, founders are going to lead with the product. I honestly don't care about it because we are investing so early, it is going to change wildly. So you're going to spend a majority of your time talking about the what. I don't care. Why? Why are you here? And is super, super important. And then what I'm watching when we're pitching is, how do they interact with each other? Do they trust each other? Do they look at each other to answer different things at different times because they have different specialties that they're going to rely on each other for throughout this process? And they don't think about this, and most of this is subconscious. But that's what I'm paying attention to, because I need to know that there's trust, within the group so that we can say yes and say, yeah, let's let them do their thing. They might not have never ever done this before, but they uniquely have skill sets in different places, and they believe in each other, and that's what we're paying attention to.
Love that. Yeah, and it's funny when I think of pitches in those early days when it was myself, Mike, and Dre on calls, we never planned who was going to answer what question. We could look in each other's eyes through a Zoom call and like see a smirk developing and like, oh, Dre's got that one. And I love that it can come naturally because that also shows that you all know the work that you should be doing. It transfers more, not just the pitch deck in that moment, but to the work that's being done within the organization. Are there other kind of
Well, I just want to build on what you're saying because I think one of the things we shared that kind of, the passion and kind of, your why. But I also think what you're saying is a really critical point, kind of building on that around the communication, right? I'm a communication scientist by training. And so to me, it goes back to something that was also shared about storytelling, but communication is so critical, especially as an innovator. I think I remember as a founder, one of the incubators or accelerators that I was in, one of the trainers was talking about when you're an innovator, your job is to, and as an entrepreneur, is to create language, to be able to translate and explain how this vision that people have never heard of and understand, and can you create the language to make it make sense to people so they can see what you see. And I thought that was really powerful because we don't think about the communication component of this, and I have seen amazing founders who have amazing ideas, but are completely ineffective communicators, which means you have to build the right team, right? So that if that's not your strength, have somebody else be the person who is that the communicator who can make sure that that you can translate those amazing ideas.
I agree a lot of what my panelists have said about the team, but also it's important to recognize that the market is also important in what the team is trying to build in. For us, it's this, if you think of a Venn diagram, team, market, and product, and the middle is kind of like where we typically invest. We know that the product is going to change. We know it's going to evolve. So what we care the most about is like the team and the market. Is this the right time? Is this the right market size? And is the team capable of investing in that, building in that? So we try to activate our network throughout our due diligence process in reaching out and learning and getting smart about this space in the hopes that we potentially introduce them down the road when we make an investment or not. Hopefully it turns into a customer or an advisor down the road. So we're trying to learn a lot about that market because we're usually not the smartest people in the room because the founders know that business way more than us. So we try to get educated about that particular market through our advisor network and through other people that we met over the years and try to ask them like, hey, does this make sense? What do you think about this market space? What are you seeing? We try to get different perspectives and different viewpoints on what they're thinking about the market and kind of ask the team the same questions and learning more about how they're seeing the market, not just now, but also down the road in 5-10 years as part of our due diligence because team and market matter the most in it.
Connecting the dots on, we agree, it's team and market for us as well, 1A, 1B. And the way that they demonstrate their industry knowledge and their like what is their competitive advantage that's bringing them into this space is usually comes in the market conversation. And the way that they can totally dissect everything that's happening within a landscape right now because of their vantage point that is unique. And then so that's good. That's credibility building. What is the like, oh man, now I'm super interested in this, is when they take that to the next level and say, our go-to-market and how we're going to attack that or approach it is by taking advantage of relationships, A, B, C, and D, that are going to open doors faster than anybody else that is going, because they don't have the relationships. So we highly bonus points when a founder is able to articulate, I can do this because I have these trusted contacts in these places who are ready to buy right now that anybody else approaching the market doesn't have the ability to do. So that's maybe the connection point.
One thing we said we weren't going to do is have everybody answer every question, but here I go. Jazz, you said something which is like, what might the founders not be thinking about that's going on in the background? So everybody who's around the table at Long Jump has built a company and has raised money. So one thing we do that not every investor does, that I think they should, is we bring transparency to that process. So if we don't invest, we tell you why. And it's super specific.
And you're honest about the
And
why.
we're very honest about it. And the feedback we get is like, wow, no one's ever said this to me before. That's really helpful. The mistake the founders make is sometimes they fight us on it. And like the decision's already been made. So you can't argue your way from a no to a yes. But our goal is that it's helpful. So if we also are big on co-founder dynamics. And we probe on like how well do you know each other? How did you form your relationship? How do you deal with conflict? All those things. If we see something that's like, that gave me pause, we actually say it to them in writing or on a phone call. Or the same thing with the market. Or you don't have a clear go-to-market, and so we didn't know how to think about how you would grow. We tell them, and I think angels can do that. But we try to lift the veil on this opaque box that is venture funding, because so many of the people we talk to, it's their first time raising capital.
I love that. I think about no's we've received in the past. And of course, as a founder, the best thing that can happen is someone says, yes, I believe in you and your vision, and I'm going to write a check to me, just Jess Hampton. The second best thing is an investor telling us no and giving us a why. An example, this happened early in our process. No, I don't think we're going to invest because there's no way that you can build a nationwide network of attorneys in all 50 states. Kudos to you, but we think it's just going to be too hard. And the next best thing to a yes was hearing the no and then saying, well, let's fight like hell to execute on that part. And it's such a fulfilling moment, and it's like that. This is almost as good as the check because we are able to see that obstacle, identify it better because someone finally told us, and work to get over it. I think that's incredibly valuable.
And sometimes no's are because of the people on the other side of the table. And I wish more funds were honest about that. I'm sorry we have a competitive company. I'm sorry we have too many. We're a generalist fund, but we commit to not 30% of our, no industry can represent more than 30% of the fund. Yeah. So we try to I saw your application, but the bar for a consumer product right now is you have to have 1 million trailing. That's high. Right? And so I'm super honest. It's not you, really it's me. Yeah. But at least it's not a vague, well, they say they're early and they're not going early, right? To just be transparent.
Well, and I just think I want to underscore that because I think it's one of the number one things that I hear from founders is that I don't know why this didn't happen. And I know as investors, it's really hard to have the time and the capacity to go back and give everyone feedback. But it is one of the greatest gifts that you can give a founder is to just take a moment or create a system within your organization that's doing the investing to provide that feedback loop because, we all know, yes, financial capital is amazing and that's kind of the goal. But social capital, right, is just as critical, which social capital, to me, caring about people as a person, saying, hey, we didn't see this, but maybe this is who you can go talk to. Here's another organization. And organizations like yours that take that time to really care about founders as individuals is so valuable. And the thing about it is, just like in everything that we know about advertising, right, word of mouth is key. Founders talk to each other. Yes. And if they say, hey, you know what, no, you do not want to work with them because this is the experience that I have as a founder, that does not help you, right, as an investor or the organization you're investing on behalf of.
And angels get those reputations too.
Yes.
Wasting founders' time, not making a quick decision, dragging them on for a 10K check that you said no to. So we all get those reputations.
For sure.
Something to recognize is a no is not a no forever. I think it's important to distinguish that you can take that feedback and come back to us maybe in a couple of months, hey, here's what's changed. And if we're specific about that feedback, it's you can specifically address that. Hey, here's how I addressed it and here's what I'm seeing. More than half of our investments in the current fund are someone that we've said no to but came back and we said yes. So it's also important to recognize that we are able to track that process and progress on what it's like to be working with you down the road because these are 10, 15-year-long relationships, and it shows us that, hey, we've taken that feedback and you kind of went back and did the work, and now maybe it's a yes. So it's important to recognize that no, it's not a forever.
It's funny you say that, because in that example that I gave, I remember I reached out to Dre, my co-founder. I was like, hey, and the updates that we send, because they said, keep sending us updates though. I'd be like, tell them we're in 25 states now. Tell them we're in 40 states now, to let them know we've made that progress. And people did invest after that feedback was given. So I love that. Transitioning to the next question, I want to be aware of our time. Out here, I saw Professor Evan, who's one of the best professors of entrepreneurship that I've ever seen do the work. Oh, look at that. Love that. And part of I've seen him in class explain this process, going from the initial meeting, whether you're filling out paperwork and sending a deck, or you met at an event, and you have the first pitch, and the call goes well, and you have a follow-up set of emails with due diligence questions. When in this process do you get to the terms? And the terms being, for those who maybe were like me who don't know what that means, the very short document that says, we'll invest this much at this valuation or with this cap. These terms that you're going to put on this relationship that you're going into, I sometimes refer to it as like the prenup. Like these terms, how do you get to those, and do you lead in the investing process? Speak to your organization and how you view that.
It should happen much earlier, just so that you understand if you're the same universe. Because it can be one of the gating factors that's an instant red flag if it's just way too late for us, or way too, founders set terms that are out of market. Do we want to go through all of this time in diligence just to get to the same place where we're not on the same page? So it happens in little pieces along the way. I think the smart founders are the ones that, if they haven't had anybody lead an investment, are cautious to say we're still looking for a lead, instead of saying, I read this blog and it told me I should say, this is a 10 million cap or uncapped safe, or whatever it happens to be. It's like, you just have now shown me how little you know about this. But there's so many things that happen from the first conversation where that comes up to where you're finally kind of now time to paper this thing. So there shouldn't be surprises, because you'd hate to spend all that time and then finally get to a place where, oh, I didn't realize we were just universes apart.
Because it's a relationship,
Yeah.
right? To use your prenup analogy. And so that relationship means there needs to be constant communication and building, like, do we want to do this? Because it is a marriage, and it can have very lasting effects, just like a divorce can, right? So, I think that it is, to your point, that communication never stops. And it's all the way from the application, being very clear about the terms that the organization has set, and or as investors, and our investment thesis, and then kind of doing check-ins along the way to make sure, is this the right fit for both of us? So we don't just jump to that, right? There's a lot, just like with dating and everything else. We're not going straight to Vegas and making this happen. We're going to really take our time, do the marriage counseling, doing all the things to make sure that this is the right fit.
Yeah, and there's 2 minutes left, so, and I actually want to come to you with the maybe the final question here. So you're in this process. You've talked about the terms, and you think that you're going to make this investment. What is the framework or the methodologies you're using for the process of actually going through with the investment?
Can I right size this? We're all kind of in the venture scene, so translating this to angels is a different conversation. So very quickly, if you're an angel and you're looking at a deal and nobody has come and set the terms before, the founder may look to you to do that. And in some cases that might make sense, and in some cases it might not. It's very situational. If you're in Minnesota and you're not sure what to do, reach out to us, and I will give you some advice on what I think it should be, even if we're not participating. And that's not always possible, but what you have to understand is, if you don't have the data set to do this, you're flying blind. And we because we lead most of the deals in Minnesota, know exactly what the price is because we did 5 other deals that look just like it within the last year. And so that's the conversation that we have with the founders that ends up being somewhat frictional at some point, where we have to educate them of like, and we take a very transparent approach of like, let me show you all of the deals that we just did without their names, of the same industry, the same stage, and the prices that we paid for these. And when we share that, they're like, I didn't realize that because we didn't have, and it's unfair, they don't have that information. And so we want to be good stewards of the community, be like, well, let's share what we know.
Yeah.
Similarly, we put it on our website. We do $100,000 at a $5 million cap. It used to be 4. And if an investor or if a founder has raised money at an arm's length, so not from their family, not from their best friend, at a different cap, we can assume that that person might be sophisticated enough, if they're writing a $100,000 check, that if they invested at 6, we float up, but we don't go above 10. And again, all this is on our website, and I was giggling to myself because of this like marriage analogy. On my 3rd date with my husband, I was like, "Do you want kids?" So apparently this is like what I do in all parts of my life. But so it's like very transparent, and then you don't go past. Just had this with founder. She raised a $15 million crowd fund. I don't trust that as a true market rate because it's different process. And so we were like, if you want to raise it at 15, you're not a fit for us. And respect that, by the way. Like, good for you. If you change your mind, we're here, and you know our terms. So it's very upfront.
And I think similarly on the due diligence aspect, at each stage it changes. Like at the earliest stage on like the angel round, like there's not a lot that you can be doing, especially with financials and all of the different things. But then as they get more mature, there's a lot more due diligence that we have to continue to do. And once the companies gets past us, there's even more due diligence that you have to do. So you have to pick your battle on like what you want to focus on. Maybe at that angel stage, it's more about that market, more about customers, and when it gets to us, we're starting to see a little bit more on financials. So it's important to figure out the type of due diligence that you want to be doing at the different stages of the company as well.
We're at 0 time, but I'm going to keep
Keep
going.
He's going to pull me off the stage.
I know,
so
but because you asked about process, so we have an investment committee. It's myself and 3 other part-time partners that I have, all founders, and it serves a really important function. I write down like a deal memo, so why I think this is the right company, why now, why can it be big, what are the risks. We have a discussion. We tape all of our interviews, so you go back, and that is very specific to a fund that we have an investment committee, and anyone can veto, and then we need a unanimous yes to move something forward. That is very unique to every different fund, so everyone has a different process. But what I love for an angel is that even if you don't have another person to bounce ideas off of, write a deal memo, because it's discipline. You can go back because you will make bad investments. And so when you go back and you're like, what did I believe that didn't come true? And it's just like a great put something on a piece of paper, use ChatGPT to do deep research on the market, and reflect back to yourself. And often in doing that process, you'll either gain conviction or you'll lose it. And so it's just like a way to be disciplined with yourself and check back. Look at the deck, keep everything in like a nice Notion or a nice folder, and you will get better and smarter, just like a fund does.
And I'll just end with this, right? Which is, this is actually always related to my very first company, right? Because it's all about relationships and doing comparing relationships in that dating process. And it's the same thing for the investor process, because to your point, yes, there are organizations that are doing early stage investing, but there are angels who don't have anybody else that's doing this, and it is still a relationship at the end of the day. And we do talk about relationships a lot, and we do think about relationships a lot.
Amazing. Well, I know that I loved starting my morning this way with this incredible group of panelists. Can we please give them a hand? They have all promised that they will sit here with every one of you till you're talking for the rest of the morning. So they're happy to answer questions for you, but we'll all be around. I really look forward to having more conversations with you all, and thank you for being here. Have a good one.